Good evening, everybody, and to those of us in the chamber and those of us joining online, especially members of the public and guests. I had hoped to start today's meeting on a uplifting, upbeat tone, but unfortunately, due to the double fatality in my ward on Sunday evening, I'm unable to do that. 2 people lost their lives well before their time. We have a number of people with serious injuries, and many with potentially life-changing impacts from a mental health perspective, especially our first-line responders. So I'd like us to just take a few moments before we get into the main meat and drink of the meeting to think of all of those in pain at this time, to offer our love, support and solidarity with them at an exceptionally distressing time. Maybe just to remind us all that we shouldn't really speculate on the causes of this and leave the emergency services to do the full investigation so that we can learn from it and obviously hope to prevent into the future. So if I could ask everybody just to be upstanding, we'll just have 1 minute silence for those impacted. Thank you very much, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, thank you very much. Can we start with item 1, apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Alan Ashbury has sent his apologies, but I believe he's joining online as well.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 2, to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of January. Are we all okay with the minutes? Agreed?
Yep.
Thank you. I might steal a pen, as always, from somebody adjacent. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 3. I'll I juggle that. Declarations of interest. Any declarations? Thank you. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. Reference, it's page 81, it's items, capital grants. It's reference the Old Dean Bowling Club. I'm actually a member of the Old Dean Bowling Club. It's a non-pecuniary, but I thought I'd better make it.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Rowlands, please.
Yes, reference funding for clubs and bodies. I'm executive member of the job club, local job club.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Any more? None on the TV screens. Okay, very good, thank you. Item 4, public question time. Did we have any? No public questions. Okay. So we'll move on to item 5, which is questions by members. Maybe just to set the scene here, we do have a lot to get just 1 second, please, Councillor Wilson. We do have a lot to get through tonight, and so what I'd like, and quite a bit of it's chunky, and I envisage a good debate on various things. So if we could take, if we could all try and focus on making sure that the questions that you might have around agenda items are pushed to later in the meeting, that would be appreciated, just for efficiency purposes. I think the second thing is if we could try and avoid Shakespearean soliloquies in our preambles to any questions, and if we could focus on one question at a time for the convenience of people listening and also the people having to answer the question. I think that's it. So with that in mind, I think Councillor Wilson might have got in first. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. After the recent adoption of the Council's equity strategy, can the portfolio holder please assure all sections of our community that they are valued? Transgender teenager Brianna Guy was brutally murdered, in part due to hate whipped up by the media, by politicians fighting the culture war. Last week, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his advisers decided it was politically advantageous to use transgender people as a punchbag in Prime Minister's questions. The fact that Brianna's grieving mother was visiting the House of Commons didn't deter him from his cruel and dangerous act, for which he has still not apologised. Our MP, Michael Gove, has supported the PM's decision to taunt transgender people. The right-wing culture war needs vulnerable victims to degrade and dehumanise. In contrast, we believe that those in public positions should lift people up, not punch down. Can you reassure transgender people in Surrey Heath that we stand in solidarity with them, value them, and grieve with them for Brianna? Thank you.
I'm terribly sorry. I forgot to put my mic on. Please, Councillor.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Wilson, for this question. Brianna Joy was murdered last February last year. And it was a premeditated, violent attack. And we know now, since details of the court case have come out, that that was undoubtedly fueled by transphobia in the media, in our society. And it's entirely unacceptable. And I think it's probably appropriate at this time, on behalf of the executive, and I hope everybody else in the room as well, that we extend our sympathies to Brianna's parents, Esther and Peter, who have acted with absolute grace and dignity, and they've really been remarkable in their generosity towards the other families involved since the loss of their daughter. When it comes to the words that we use, each of us have a huge responsibility to employ language with care. And I was very disappointed to see PMQs last week, particularly because Esther Joy was in the gallery and she was there on other business, but nonetheless, I would have thought that some sensitivities would have been employed. And then I was further disheartened in the days following PMQs that the Prime Minister and our own MP, I'm sorry to say, were unable to acknowledge that there was a serious error of judgment in using the words that were used. But I know that within this chamber there is compassion, and I'm sure Councillor Garrett will forgive me for acknowledging publicly that he himself has supported Pride in Surrey events and has heard trans volunteers speaking about their journey and their transition in life, and I know that we shared how meaningful that was at the time. So I'm heartened by that, and I think that people here are good people who are willing to be empathetic and understanding. As a council, we support all minority groups, and I think we have our Achieving Equity strategy, which is a really strong document. And within that, we acknowledge gender and sex as protected characteristics, and we put a lot of work and detail into making sure that we look after all those minority groups, and I think it's essential that we recognise that. We also have our council strategy, which specifically references the census data around trans people, and we do have quite a substantial number of trans people in Surrey Heath. We also have flown the progressive flag here in Surrey Heath, and most of you, I'm sure all of you, will remember that we had to apply for the planning permission to do that, but it was really important because that represents trans people and as being part of the LGBTQ plus community, and it's very important that they're represented visually as we fly the flag for Pride Month. So just to round up, thank you for that question. It is really important, and it gives me the opportunity to reassure our trans residents at this time, which is a really difficult time for trans people, that we are there for them, that we value them as members of our community, and that this administration will always strive for true inclusion and equity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. I don't know about anybody else, but I did listen to the text messages on the radio that between the various people, and it was so horrendous. I had to turn off the radio, which is quite rare for me. So thank you for the question and the answer, Lisa. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you. Different subject, and I promise it won't be Shakespearean or a soliloquy. I was recently contacted by the Old Dean lollipop lady, who has had a number of issues. She's seen a couple of near misses outside the shops at the co-op, which is down to bad parking, basically. And I know that comes under county, and I know the portfolio holder has had a number of issues trying to contact the relevant people at county. I just wanted to bring it to the chamber that, in light of what you said at the very beginning, I don't want to see an accident outside the shops at the Old Dean, but as someone that passes on a daily basis, it's only a matter of time before something happens. And I think something needs to be done. And when I questioned the fact that we could get officers up there to check on the parking, I'm told that because one of the area of times is between 5 and 6, which is when they can park there. And apparently, I believe that the officers don't necessarily work all hours of the day. So my concern is that there is an issue with parking. It's not necessarily anything done about it. And I know this is not just an Old Dean thing. I know this is a borough-wide thing. And I know the portfolio holder has been discussing it, but I just want to highlight that I've had a couple of messages, and I would like, if possible, that to be addressed and something to be done specifically there, but obviously throughout the borough. Thank you.
Thank you for raising Councillor Garrett. Councillor Ashbury, would you like to respond in any way to that? Pick it up later?
All I can say at the moment is I will add that to my very long list of issues that I am waiting to have an interaction with Surrey County on. I'm still struggling to get traction with the county highways team. But I will continue to try.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. My apologies for leaving the mic on. I was just commenting to the Chief Executive there whether we could do an officer-to-officer approach as well to try and get something moving. I was there actually at that location not that long ago myself. I saw Councillor Hock there as well. Yeah, we need to look at these things to avoid the little ones getting hurt. My pet hate is a BT vans that park outside my house, which is on a brow of a hill and is a bus stop as well. So I'm regularly out giving them some pearls of wisdom about moving on. So yeah, thank you for raising Councillor Garrett. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Could you possibly hold that up for me? Thank you very much, that's brilliant. So I wanted to make all councillors and officers aware of the potential for trademark infringement legal action by publishers of the Dummies Guide regarding the recent online publication of Surrey Heath Borough Council Finances for Dummies by the Surrey Heath Conservative Association. The reason I raise this is to see whether this council is aware it could face a potential financial liability for defence costs and damages for allowing or authorising the publication of this image carrying the full council's name. Bearing in mind the serious financials this council faces, does the leader agree with me that we need to be very careful not to be drawn into more litigation than we're already committed to? I have other copies if people would like to see them.
Councillor Lee, I'm terribly sorry. I was in consultation with the Chief Executive. What exactly was your question there?
That's all right. My apologies. Bearing in mind the serious financial pressures the council faces, does the leader agree with me that we need to be very careful not to be drawn into more litigation than we're already committed to?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. To my knowledge, none of the council officers have been involved in this activity where the council's name has been associated with this document that Councillor Lee is waving around. Do any of the senior officers want to tell me otherwise?
Leader, if I could comment on behalf of the other officers present. No, there's no awareness of this publication and the council's association with it, so we'd be very interested in seeing it and exploring this further.
Thank you. I understand Atia Fard and Stuart Black have been widely sharing it, but I can obviously share a copy with you.
If you could take that up offline, Councillor Lee, thank you. Any more? Gosh. Oh, hang on, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, if there's time. Last time I asked the portfolio holder, Councillor Skipper, about the progress on the Albert Road Play Park in Bagshot, and I think progress is excellent there, and really excited to know that it's going to be open for business around the end of March. I was wondering if there's been any progress on the other nearby play park in Whitmore Road. It's on the same estate that's affected by the closure of the M3 footbridge to Lightwater Country Park, so there's a lot of families there who can't access the country park now, and the Whitmore Road play park's in a really bad state. I know it's been on the agenda for a few years now. I just wonder if there's been any progress recently. Thank you.
Councillor Skipper, please.
The update I've had so far is that the Surrey Heath are liaising with Surrey County Council in finalising a lease for Whitmore Park. Once the lease has been signed and payment received from Surrey County Council, Surrey Heath will proceed with the replacement of the play park. But as of yet, we don't know when that will be.
Thank you.
But when I do, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take that one up next time I see somebody in Surrey, but I think there was the meeting the legal minds, which was one of the key steps. So hopefully some of the other ones will progress a little bit faster. Yeah, I think everybody's aware, and I'm sure across the chamber we'll use our relationships to put a bit of pressure on to keep that moving forward. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. I was going to save this, but I thought, in the spirit of what's been happening so far, I would just go for it. On the 5th of February, there was a post on the Surrey Heath Lib Dems about recycling figures. This has been shared across many social outlets. I would like to thank the Liberal Democrats for highlighting all the hard work the officers and the previous administration have put into increasing recycling. This has made Surrey Heath in the top of Surrey and the 8th best in the country. I understand the latest figures which were posted in the members' briefing relate to figures only just published by the government, actually based on statistics long before the new administration were even in place. I would like to ask the leader to thank all the officers and previous administration for all their hard work over many, many years to put Surrey Heath in this position. Thank you.
Happy to do that. Thank you, Councillor Garrett, for the question. And I also think what was truly shocking was to see some of the lowest performers in the country. It was, light and day and night in terms of the performance, and not what any of us want to see. I don't know whether Councillor Rise you'd like to add to that, seeing as this is your brief.
Thank you, Leader. I definitely support those comments regarding the work that officers and JWS have undertaken to get us back up into the top 10 after we fell out of the top 10 position that we previously held. I think with regards to the social media post that was posted, that was a National Liberal Democrat post which was shared. I'm sure social media accounts in all parties share certain things. However, this administration is incredibly proud of the work that we've done, and we are aiming to increase our position within the top 10, hopefully higher up even further. Thank you.
Good ambition. Thank you, Councillor Rise. And I don't think it's that difficult. It was a couple of percent, I think, from memory to get to the number 1 spot. So, but thank you, Councillor Garrett, for raising that. And indeed, thank you to all of those involved in making that happen, which I think is probably Mr. Stevens' portfolio. If we move on, nobody on the phones? Oh, Councillor Wilson. I think this will probably be the last one. It is the last one, apparently. There we go. Councillor Wilson, please.
Great, thanks. And thank you to the portfolio holder for pointing out that the top 8 recycling councils in the UK are all Liberal Democrat run now. My question to him is about fly tipping and the enforcement actions that are going on, prosecutions. Can you give me an update on the council's work on that, and especially in the Windlesham area where I'm constantly reporting fly tipping? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for the question. We've discussed this many times, and it was a question at the last full council as well. As the council will be aware, the council recently, I believe last year, purchased a portable, movable camera which can be used, which has increased our ability to follow enforcement. In terms of continuing fly tipping, we do have a outstanding case which is awaiting legal, with the legal team awaiting summons. So hopefully we'll be able to pursue that case further. It's something that the corporate enforcement team are always watching and ensuring that we prosecute where possible. I take a very dim view to fly tipping. It is a crime, and when possible, we will always prosecute.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I was a bit concerned after the first one. We were going to have some long questions and long answers, but we sped up nicely. So thank you, everybody, for your support there. It was a very important topic. So if we move on to item 6, revenue budget and medium-term financial strategy. Snappy title. Councillor McIntyre, I think this is with you.
Thank you, Chair. So I propose to the Executive that the annual budget and accompanying medium-term financial strategy is recommended to next week's full council. 2024-25 is a budget which has had to absorb a huge amount of additional costs, such as contractual inflation, higher interest rates, and above budgeted for staff costs, as well as ensuring that the essential expenditure required for maintenance and health and safety purposes is contained within the capital budget, which then requires funding through loans and therefore greater levels of interest expense and debt repayment. The budget comes at a time when pressures on residents' cost of living is high and when there is little certainty over the macro level economics. The demand on services which our most vulnerable residents lean on is increasingly under strain, and yet our ability to raise income is limited. Whilst using the statutory maximum increase for council tax, we only retain 11% within our borough and only 8% of the business rates because of the levelling up policy, which only exacerbates the gap which we need to close. Whilst putting together the budget, which has been a long process, and my thanks go to all the service leads who have considered all manner of options, as well as the finance team and Mr. Watson, who have worked and reworked many spreadsheets. We have placed emphasis on supporting the most vulnerable whilst adopting a user pays philosophy. This leaves council tax to be spent on the services which all residents use, largely as a statutory service, and which therefore the council must provide. Inflation is coming down, thankfully, but a reduction in inflation does not mean costs are coming down. Inflation is a measure of how quickly prices are rising, and therefore the plus 10% inflationary uplift that we have had is now baked into our cost base. This budget has taken £4.7 million of growth and £4.5 million of efficiencies, and has resulted in a draw this year, for the 24-25 year of £2.65 million out of the reserves, and there's a capital programme of £10.8 million. Overall, as a council, we remain in the position of having to rely on using reserves to balance the budget, and this is not sustainable, and as noted by our Section 151 officer, the level of the General Fund reserves in Year 4 of the MTFS is too low to be considered sufficient. Therefore, this budget in 24-25 2024-25 is in place to deliver on the must-do items, the programmes which are needed to meet health and safety standards, items which we have to get sorted in order to allow us to make the transformational changes in the future and ensure that the council is sustainable. It is important to note that as a council, we look favourably on capital expenditure, which sits in the invest to save category. That is to say, where upfront capital investments result in longer-term reduction in revenue recognised within the useful economic life of that investment, such as the PV installation on Places Leisure Centre. We know that there are likely to be more of these opportunities, and we will determine which projects can be initiated on a case-by-case basis, with the full individual business cases being proposed and determined on their own merits over the course of the MTFS. I also want to note, in order to avoid confusion in the Chamber and for our residents, that the majority of our reserves, which the Council holds on the balance sheet, are not cash. These reserves are IOUs. These IOUs are established as the available cash has been used to fund expenditure rather than taking out loans at that particular time. And this is seen in our internal borrowing in our reports. This means that every pound taken out of our reserves requires us to take out a new loan and lock in higher financing costs. The MTFS has this additional funding requirement at £10 million, and that's before any capital expenditure. And we should not forget that in order to replenish those reserves, we need to be back in a position where income exceeds expenditure. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Any questions? Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks to everyone for all the work that's gone into putting this budget together. I usually think that the element of budgets that need to be stress tested a little bit are the efficiencies, and I've sort of been through them. I just wondered if either the finance portfolio or someone else could explain to me the one marked JWS income and recharge to partner councils on page 61 of the agenda. And is that basically because we're the contract holder with JWS, the money comes into us and then goes back out, we recover it then from other councils? Is that correct? So that's not an efficiency saving as such, it's just how it's marked in the budget. Is that right?
Yes, essentially. The terms growth and efficiencies are a bit weird to, even to myself. Poor Mr. Watson's had to deal with my inability to define them properly. But yeah, growth tends to be where items become more expensive, and the efficiency is where we've either got savings or additional income.
Is it fair to say that we take 100% of the cost and then charge out 75% back to the councils? It's just the other councils. It's just the way roughly it works in the books. Is that fair? Mr. Watson, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, that's correct. The way we had to do it is we have to show all the growth and then all the income, just to give us the budgets as they should be. Otherwise, if we net it off there, you don't see the detail for transparency.
Still quite scary numbers, the 25% we're left with because of the 6.5% inflation. Councillor Garrett, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Very sporting of you. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Rice.
Just to provide some further clarity on that. So Surrey Heath is the operating council of JWS. So essentially we are the employer of all JWS staff, and we're the council that essentially runs from an employer point of view. So everything comes through Surrey Heath, but it is the four councils of the joint authority that fund it. So as others have said, it's the money come in and then money gone out. It's just the fact that we are the relevant council that runs JWS as a corporate employer.
Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a few, and they're not detailed questions. I just want to clarify on some lines. Do you want me to give you, I think it's about 4, do you want me to give you them in one go? And I'll give you the page number as well.
Are they all part of the same part of the report?
So, pretty much actually. So the first one is on page, no it's not, it's on page 51, and it's the special expenses. And I know there's a note next to it, not saying number 17, but it didn't actually clarify exactly what that one was. So because specialist sounds a bit special. So if I give you the other ones as well, so the other line was on page 50. Oh yeah, so page 56, increasing cost of museum and heritage services. I think really highly of the museum. I'm just interested to see what the 28,000 relates to. Also on the same page, if I dare ask, audit fees. I know they're there every year, and I know we haven't had a complete audit for a few years. Are we paying them every year? Or are we suddenly, if we suddenly by some miracle get 3 audits all in the same go, are we going to have to pay all 3 in one go? That's that. And then, oh yeah, so the next 2 are related. Page 58, provision for borough election cost 30,000 for 24-25. There isn't a borough election in this year, so I'm just wondering if that's carried over. And then the page 62, reversal of previous year one-off growth for borough election costs 110,000, which again we haven't got borough election. So I'm sure there's very good reasons for all of them, but if you could clarify them, I'd be grateful.
I think we should start with the one that I think Mr. Watson loves the most, which is the audit fees, but he might spontaneously combust.
I'll take them. Thank you, Councillor Garrett, for your questions. The first one, special expenses. It happens when sometimes you have unparished areas within a borough. So in this instance, we have Frimley and Camberley that don't have parishes. It would be unfair for them to get all the services that parishes get, that they then raise a precept for in the parish without having to pay for it. So we raise a special expense precept against those unparished areas, and that's what that one is. The museum one, Mr. Stevens seems keen to jump in, but I believe it's just the fact that the museum is in premises within the town centre. Those premises costs go up, business rates change and things like that, plus there's various other elements go into it and general cost of running a business. So that's just general inflationary growth.
Yeah, if I may just give a point of clarification on that. It's actually in relation to what Mr. Watson will tell me is the right budget in the right place. And that is a mantra that we're all mindful of. This is in relation to the fact that the lease costs for the museum were previously within property and economic development. This is a shift across into a different budget line.
Thank you very much. Audit fees, yes. It's well known that there is a backlog in audit. It's well known, if you look at some of the news items going on around it, that there is a general shortage of auditors to come and audit accounts, particularly in local government. For some reason, people don't see it as the exciting career path that it once was. Partly because of that, the money that the audit firms pay isn't very good, because the audit fees were fixed originally back in 2014 when the Audit Commission disappeared, and the PSAA, which is the public sector audit appointments body, came in and they fixed the audit fees. The audit firms will claim they're fixed too low. Council officers will say, great, they're a really good price for us, we like it. Recognising that they probably were fixed too low, the PSAA have increased them dramatically over the last year or so, hence why we've got a huge growth in the audit fees. Your second question on it, are we paying them? No, we haven't had a bill yet because they haven't audited the accounts yet. I expect they will send a bill in at some point. So each year we accrue that money in the budget, roll it forward like that. I fully hope, and I don't think I'll be alone amongst other finance officers, if the auditors do not come and audit the accounts but put a disclaimer in as we get closer to the backstop date the government's announced this week, then it is very likely that we will not want to pay them for not auditing the accounts. I imagine there'll be quite a few councils will say the same thing, and potentially that will have to then go to resolution somewhere. But it doesn't seem fair to pay someone who hasn't done the work. The next one was the borough elections, and this is very much, as Mr. Stevens said earlier, getting the right budget in the right place. As you know, we have all-out elections here every 4 years. Now, what's happened previously was that election was budgeted for in that 4th year. Therefore, you had a nothing big hit. The correct way to do it is to create a budget reserve that you set up for the election and you put into it for each year of that election period and the term of office. So 30,000 this year, 30,000 next year, 30,000 the year after, and then the 30,000 the 4th year gives us the £120,000. That's what then pays for the election in that 4th year. The one that comes out is the fact that last year we put one-off growth in to pay for the elections that we had. So therefore I need to reverse it out in the following year to make sure the budgets are right. Right budget, right place. My work here is done.
Please, Councillor Garrett.
So just to follow up,
Mr. Watson.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that one then, Mr. Watson. So I totally understand what you're saying. So why is there not 30, 30, 30 for 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28 in the budget?
Because once you put it in the base, it's in the base forever. So if I put 30, 30, 30, by the time we get to the 4th year, we'd have 120,000 in the base, which would be too much. So it's 30,000 each year, but you only put it in the base once, it then stays in the base.
Beauty of government budgets.
Well, it's not done.
Councillor Wilson, I think, was next. Yeah.
Thank you. So page 36 of the full agenda pack, which is page 18 out of 31 of the report, Councillor McIntyre talked about the assumption of raising council tax by the maximum capped referendum limit, and that Surrey Heath Borough Council is not the only recipient of a residents' council tax, and you can see there the two bigger recipients are Surrey Police and Surrey County Council. So in terms of the percentage increase and the amount of the increase for a Band D property, how does Liberal Democrat Surrey Heath Borough Council compare with Conservative Surrey County Council and Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So Surrey County Council's percentage increase is 4.99, so just over £83 a year. Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner is 4.2%, which is £13. And as you know, ours is 2.99%, which is £7.20.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Windlesham Parish Council is proposing raising council tax by a record-breaking and inflation-busting 44%. That's over £18 for a Band D house, for every household in Lightwater, Bagshot and Windlesham, to pay for a new political communications officer. It's for a 12-month run-up to the general election. So this is 2.5 times the rise proposed by this council. While they're improving social media output, what will Surrey Heath Borough Council be spending its £7.20 council tax rise on?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. So as per paragraph 2.6 of the MTFS, our rise is based on a number of different factors, so inflationary pressures, service demand pressures, but also baking in the revenue grants into our base budget and pay rises for staff that we factored in.
You done, Councillor Lee?
Thank you.
Very good. Councillor White, please.
Service outputs starts on page 26, but and the headings, environment and community, and the figures are, the two figures, last year's budget and this year's budget, are similar. And the next heading, finance and customer, is a similar number, all the way up until you get to planning and property and economic development, and the numbers halve. It may be a silly question, I don't know, but does that mean that the service is going to halve? Does that mean we're cutting those two services?
Sorry, Councillor White, could you just confirm which page it was? I'm sorry for not missing that at the beginning. Mike.
Sorry, page 32 of the agenda.
Great, thank you. Mr. Watson, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Leader. So, turning to planning, yes, it looks like it's a net cost of services budget, and it is. The net cost of that service is coming down by half. The main reason for that is if you go to look at the growth appendix, it is an increase in the planning fee income that we agreed and has been agreed, firstly in the statutory fee income and then the proposal to agree increased planning fees. So what we're showing here is the net cost. The expenditure limit for that service hasn't reduced, in fact it's increased over the period. So there's no cut to the planning service. What we're doing is increasing the income, and as Councillor McIntyre mentioned earlier, it's partly for the people who are using the service, paying for that service, rather than any other way of doing it. The other one, I'm afraid, is as Councillor Garrett mentioned, we're talking the property service, aren't we, I think?
Yeah.
Right. This is a real vacancy of local government accounting. So the net cost of service in 23-24 was a income net of 1.082, and the net cost of service in 24-25, give me glasses for this one, is an income of 520,000. So actually what we're seeing there is a reduction in the income target for that service. So actually the cost of that service net is going up.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I think Councillor White will get into the detail of some of that under agenda item number 11, so we can revisit some of that. I think also somewhere else in the report from memory, it says that the property portfolio will lose us 2.25 million in the budgeting year that we're planning. Is that correct, Mr. Watson?
I believe so, yes. I can't recall the exact point, but it's about that.
I'll find the page if I need to later. Yeah, thank you. Okay, but thank you very much, Councillor White. Any more? Councillor Wilson.
Also, I think, sorry to interrupt, Councillor Rowlands as well, with his hand up.
Who was first over there? Because you're out of my eye line. Okay, so we'll go Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Rowlands. Thank you for your patience. Murray.
Thank you, Leader. So coming back to what Councillor McIntyre said about the need in future to have a budget where the income is higher than the expenditure, and linking into the point about the property portfolio. So, and it's later on in this agenda, but the House of Fraser building was purchased for about £18 million, and it's so if the council's net debt was £18 million less, it would save about £1 million in annual debt repayments and interest, and it costs a fortune for the council to keep the building in the state that it's in or to improve it. So it could be £1 to £2 million it's costing the revenue budget by having that. So my question is, what if? So if the previous administration had not purchased the House of Fraser building, would this year's budget actually be putting paying into the general fund reserves? Or could that be used, for example, to maintain the council's car parks without raising charges, if that decision had not been taken to buy that building? Thank you.
I think it's probably best if myself and Councillor McIntyre maybe try that one. I think the simple maths would work out, if you look at the 2 million gap that we have, and we go with your numbers of 1 to 2 million saving, which I haven't calculated, but I'll go with it for now, then yes, net we would be about zero. So we wouldn't be putting money into the coffers, but we wouldn't be taking money out of the reserves either. I suspect, like all of us in life, we would love to have a time machine and go back and change some decisions, but unfortunately this budget doesn't allow us to do that, and so it's very much forward-looking, and we'll have to talk about the consequences of those fatal decisions later on in today's meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Mack, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't know why I just put my microphone on, because I was going to say no. That's covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Rowlands, I'm terribly sorry. We're going to have to squeeze everybody in up here. I can never see over there. I apologise. Please, Councillor Rowlands.
Not out of sight, out of mind, I hope. On page 56, there's a reference. All my discussions with the manager of the Places Leisure indicates they are doing very well indeed. And I was surprised that we have listed an additional amount that they're asking us to pay. I'd be interested in the background to that, because they seem to be embarking on a number of new endeavours, etc. So that was a bit surprised. The item on the theatre about increasing the cost of the theatre, I'm told by a number of organisations who are still scattered around the community in church halls, etc., the cost of actually hiring the theatre is still beyond their means. So I was rather puzzled by that remark, that they feel it necessary to have an increased charge on theatre bookings. Read what I'm writing here.
Would it be okay, Councillor Rhodes, if we answer those 2 points and you come back with your third one? Would that be okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, okay. Is Mr. Stevens picking these two up, or somebody else? Mr. Skipper?
I can.
Oh, who's doing it? You're doing it down there.
I can do it. I know the other. So this refers back to my point earlier, where efficiencies and growth are a bit of a weird concept. So here, the Leisure Centre, if I'm looking at the right page, then under surface efficiencies, if that's what you're looking at, and it shows £525 in brackets, that is actually an increase in income to us rather than an expense. So they are doing well, and that is an increase into us. The comment on theatre, it is similar, but do you want to comment on this one, Councillor Rice?
I was just going to, I believe instead of page 56, it's page 55. And just on, with regards to the increasing cost of the Places Leisure project, because obviously there's the energy benchmarking. So these are parts of the service contract that the council has with Places Leisure to provide the leisure centre. So these are things that are essentially, it's a growth in the cost, but as Councillor McIntyre said, there's further, because Places Leisure is doing well, we're actually receiving income. So they cancel, the income cancels this on page 38 to 38,000 out. And there's also, for example, with the PV panels that we've put on, they're putting on to Places Leisure, that again will also provide further income that will counteract the energy benchmarking clause within the contract with Places Leisure. With the theatre, I think Councillor Skipper is probably best to answer.
So net very positive on Places Leisure is the message. Is Councillor Skipper picking up the other item?
Just everything what Councillor Morgan has just explained.
Councillor Rowlands, did you have further points?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett, please.
So page 62, local plan provision for gypsy, traveller and travelling show people, because I know we haven't discussed that much in the chamber recently. Is this money to be allocated as part of the local plan for just this year? Because, or going back to Mr. Watson's comment of earlier on, is that just to try and find a place, or is that to invest money in trying to find a place? What's that 500,000 actually for? Thank you. Sorry, page 82, not 62. I apologise. I think I might need better glasses. Sorry. So page 82, second line down.
Page 82, is it the capital programme, yeah? Yeah, I think it's an allowance, isn't it, to make sure that we have the potential to do it. Mr. Watson, do you want to add anything?
I think you've absolutely nailed it there, Leader. It is a provision in the budget that we are required to provide pitch sites as part of our local plan. This is the second year of a 2-year programme. There was £500,000 put in last year, which is on the appendix carried forward. So that will give us £1 million in the budget. I don't know whether that's sufficient or not, but it certainly puts a marker in the sand.
Leader, can I just add, because we talked earlier about revenue budgets, and once it's in the base, it repeats itself, and that's absolutely true, but with capital, that doesn't apply. So that 500,000 is a one-off, and it stays there until it's spent. Thank you.
I think the issue is probably not the money, it's finding the locations, which unfortunately is the stumbling block at the moment. Okay, any others? Please, Councillor Rowlands.
Yeah, I've just managed to read my own writing. The question about on page 56, in relation to housing, increased bed and breakfast prices. Is this a reflection of the situation being faced throughout the country of increasing homelessness, and the problem is reflected in our increasing homeless figures?
Thanks, Councillor Rowlands. Yes, I think you've answered your own question. It's demand and inflation in that same line.
They're very quiet on the phones today, but maybe we'll pick up later. Anybody else? No? Very good. Thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. And I think, Councillor Rowlands, you're not the only one that can never read his own writing, so don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Okay. I do think in future we should get people to ask the questions in order of the page numbers. That's going to be so much easier. It will be difficult for the chair to manage.
So our page numbers don't marry up, because I think I'm looking at something completely different. So.
There's room for improvement always. Right. So the recommendation is for the executive. The executive is advised to recommend to the council at its budget meeting on 21st of February 2024 the approval of the medium-term financial strategy and associated revenue budget estimates covering the period 2024-25 to 2027-28, which includes the revenue budget estimates covering the period 2024-25 to 27-28 as follows. A, the 2024-25 budget estimates giving a net cost of services revenue budget for the council of 17.347 million, as shown in Appendix 1 to the medium-term financial strategy. B, to agree the unavoidable service pressures and budget growth of 4.723 million, shown in Appendix 1 and in more detail in Appendix 1-1 to the medium-term financial strategy. C, to agree the revenue efficiencies of 4.525 million, shown in Appendix 1 and in more detail in Appendix 1-2 to the medium-term financial strategy. D, to approve the recommendation by the Strategic Director, Finance and Customer Service, brackets, the Council, Section 151 Officer, that a sum of up to 2.5 million of the interest equalisation earmarked reserve be drawn to support the revenue budget over the period of the medium-term financial strategy and provide a sustainable budget for the growth, as for the council. E, that the Surrey Heath Borough Council element of the annual council tax preset be increased by 2.99% for all council tax bands. Point 2, the capital strategy as set out at Appendix 2 to the medium-term financial strategy and associated capital programme, Appendix 2-1, covering the period 2024-25 to 2027-28, which includes the new capital bids. Do I have to go through all this? Because this is really
Leader, I think
a test.
I think it's a rather large amount of information. I think
Excellent.
If you could just refer to the paragraph numbers or letters, I think that would be sufficient rather than reading out every word.
Good. I started it without looking to see how long it went on for. I thought I was in just a minute there for a second. Okay, where did we get to? So point 2, we agree point 2, F, G and H. We agree point 3, or 3 I's. We agree J and K, and the executive is advised to note points L, M, N, O, P, and that's it. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Gosh.
Agreed.
I was running out of steam on that one. Right, we move on. Thank you, everybody, for your inputs on that one. And maybe before I forget, actually, because I do have a nasty habit of forgetting stuff. Point 6, 7, 8 and 9, thanks ever so much to P&F for reviewing all of those agenda items and your diligence in doing that and helping to improve them. And obviously to the Chair, Councillor Garrett, for coordinating all of that with, I think, Councillor Noble's support as well. Yeah, and obviously all the relevant officers who enjoyed supporting that process, I'm sure. So if we move forward to item number 7, the council strategy. This was me. I think it's, listen, we tried to be pragmatic in approaching this. Obviously, we had a new administrative review that the chief executive led a couple of years ago, looking at residents' feedback as to what they found was important. So we tried to take a best of both approach in coming forward with the council strategy. It's gone for a number of consultations. Obviously, our slogan is delivering for you and a fairer society. That's come out of it with the 5 themes. I'm happy to take any questions on it. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Leader. The new theme of campaign for residents, that is a completely new one for this council, and it's already starting to reap rewards for our residents. It's having a council that's prepared to stand up for their interests to other public bodies and private bodies and basically serve the public as a whole, regardless of whether it's a subject that is in the council's remit. I think that is really appreciated by residents. Could you give some examples of how this is already happening and what it will do in future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, there's been a number of things where we've been proactive. Obviously, looking in your own area, the Bagshot Light Water Bridge and the loss of that to the communities that we both serve. Also, we've been active in terms of the Frimley Park Hospital relocation and trying to get involved in that conversation and have our voice heard again on behalf of the residents of the borough. Particularly sensitive that we might lose it to another county, another constituency. But we'll keep working away on that one to try and get some surety. And I guess the major one, which the councillors across the chamber have supported, would be the Thames Water and holding them to account for the Camberley stink. Is it the Water Consumers Association or something similar to that? Has come out with quite a damning report in terms of how Thames Water has behaved. And I am personally leading negotiations with them on a suitable resolution and recompense to the residents in some way. Is there anything of significance the colleagues think I've missed so far? No. I think it will be a fluid picture. I think the issues will change over time and will come up from beneath, hopefully. And then we will see what we can do working across the chamber to address those issues as they arise. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
Councillor Rowlands, please.
Yes, Chair, there's reference, I'm talking about page 4, reference to the, it says assembly and preparation of the London road block. I'm not sure what that means. Can we have an elucidation on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. As you're aware, we own quite a lot of property across the town centre, and what we need to do is to try and complete the portfolio so that we can then look to regenerate and see if we can find developers to support us in that. So it's clearly an important item for the borough as a whole, but particularly for those most adjacent to Camberley. No other takers? Good, okay, thank you very much. And thank you to Ms Bainbridge, who's joined us, for coordinating all of that, and to the Chief Executive for his support in pulling that together. I think it's come to a nice conclusion and hopefully will be digestible by the residents, because we've tried to keep it simple and crisp. So if we look at the recommendation for the executive, it's a shorter one, hallelujah. The executive is advised to recommend to full council that the new council strategy 2024-2028 at Annex A to this report be adopted. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We move on to item 8, which is the draft annual plan, which I have a horrible feeling is also with me. Yes. It is with me, yeah. So I think you're all fairly familiar with plans. This is our revised one for next year. It obviously is highly connected with the strategy. We've tried to make sure that the plan, the implications of the plan also align with the budget, which we've touched on earlier in today's meeting. But I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have for myself or the other portfolio holders in relation to the annual plan. Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you, Leader. And thanks for everyone who put in the work pulling this plan together. One of the things I'm pleased is on there is an objective of help create more homes to meet local need. The question I would ask is, how should we measure that? As the Leader will know, I like to hold the administration to account. So on page 170, where it says, develop relationships with housing associations to increase the delivery of affordable homes, specifically through the release of underutilised land at best value, targeted March 2025. Could he or a member of the executive expand a little bit more on what that might look like by March 2025 and what progress we might see?
Just catching up with you, Councillor Cope. Yeah, well, I'm just skimming through there. Yeah, good question. Thank you. So I think it's a multi aspects to that one, because maybe Councillor Ashbury might want to comment from the local plan point of view, and possibly also Councillor Finan Cook as well from the liaison with the housing associations. But maybe I could just pick up the comment around spare land and everything else. So Mr. Breenan and myself, in fact, even this week, were discussing the portfolio that has been, the catalogue of land and properties that we have, where the opportunities might lie, and how we can start bringing some of those forward. Listen, it won't be thousands of houses, as you would expect. We haven't got that kind of land lying around. But there are little pockets here and there where we could look to put in some units and maybe just take give a few people a home, which is very important for longer term well-being. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mr. Reenan, in terms of just on that side, and then maybe the other two can chip in on from other angles.
I think it's a fair summary, and we've got the big regeneration projects as well, which will deliver affordable homes as well.
Anybody else want to contribute to that? Councillor Ashbury, you got something to chip in?
Yeah, just say the local plan, obviously, that is currently in development will have the targets and the sites that we're currently planning to bring forward. Obviously, the measure of the success of that will be how many of those we bring forward, and the percentage of affordable homes that is also included in that in terms of developing those sites. So yeah, that will be all in the local plan, which we are hoping to publish later this year.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. You did say, thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. So this is page 171. So car parks in Surrey Heath are on the brink, aren't they? Yeah, a councillor from Chobham confused the car park in my ward with manorial waste, as opposed to a car park. It's been so badly maintained over the years. And I'm told that there's rumours circulating that a film company is looking for a scene set on the moon, is considering using one of our car parks. It's so craterous now. So isn't it clear that implementing the new parking strategy is urgent in achieving the council's aim to support vibrant villages and local centres?
I think the answer to that is yes. We have got that on the agenda later. I'm suspecting there may be a few questions and queries around it. So maybe we move that one to later. Councillor Lee, is that okay?
Yes, and also if the filming of the moon scene in one of the craterous car parks takes place, can we ensure we get some money from the filming company, please?
I'm sure Mr. Watson would be happy to find a cost code to put that income into, should the need arise. Thank you. No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Again, thank you to Ms. Bainbridge and the team for coordinating that. I think we started at a significantly larger number of pages and actions and tried to get it down to something more manageable. Got that. Okay, so the executive is advised to resolve that the attached annual plan for 2024-25 be agreed subject to the approval of the annual budget 2024-25 at full council on the 21st of February 2024. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you to Ms. Kipping as well for coordinating all of that. Yep. Okay. Councillor Lee was one step ahead of himself, so we move on nicely to the parking strategy, item number 9, which thankfully gives me a breather because it's over to Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, everybody. Once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Stevens, Ms. Greenfield and Mr. Burns for their patience and diligence in putting the parking strategy together. You'll see from the paper this parking strategy has been before Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee in January. You might recall I mentioned at that time that the document was not fully complete. I believe those errors and inaccuracies have now been resolved. One such error which caused confusion was the issue of the Sunday parking, as there was contradiction within the text and tables within the paper. This has now been corrected, and the pay-on-foot car park changes are proposed to be brought in line with the rest of the week. As noted by the paper, the rest of the recommendations of the P&F meeting have now been considered and implemented. Following the review of the car parking charges at the base review in July, the extent of the neglect across the borough's car parks became apparent and there was no ongoing maintenance programme in place to ensure the quality and safety of the car parks. We took the decision that a fully comprehensive, proactive parking strategy was needed before we made any financial changes. We believe that the use of the car parks in Surrey Heath should extend to more than simply the infrastructure. Residents should be able to use the car parks feeling safe, knowing which level they're on without experiencing unpleasant smells. They should also feel confident about high levels of customer service, whilst knowing that we have considered other issues such as the environment, user safety and well-being. The strategy sets out plans for Surrey Heath to have safer car parks kept in better condition with the essential structural and safety maintenance improvements undertaken, easier contactless payments, cleaner, so less smelly environments, security, the need of improved or where needed replace CCTV, better signage and markings. There has been very little proactive maintenance undertaken in our car parks in recent years. The strategy shows every one of our car parks needs significant works. We have already undertaken lots of unavoidable urgent works to ensure that our car parks remain safe, but there is still more to do. We have commissioned a structural report dated the 17th of January 24 of the main square car park. Included in these comments are, for example, generally the car park appears to be in a lower than satisfactory condition with some noticeable structural concerns. Later in the report it goes on to say, due to ponding, the puddles, near the external edges, the base plates and the fixings of the barriers are severely corroded. My final example, on a few locations where the main precast, pre-stressed beams are supported by the shear walls, the supporting corbel has failed and steel columns, props have been installed. This should only have been a temporary solution whilst carrying out the repairs of the corbel. Obviously, if the car park was considered unsafe, it would have been closed down, but this emphasises the need of the work to be undertaken urgently. Every car park across this borough needs improvements such as safety measures and the addition of signage. During the previous council term, parking charges were discussed with a view to a fee increase. As I have said on many occasions, I fought very hard against this because at the time I was not aware of the precarious state of the council's finances or indeed of the maintenance on the car parks. As you heard earlier this evening, this administration has inherited a budget shortfall of 3.8 million from the previous Conservative administration. The charges were increased in April of 22. Yet the generated income was not proactively invested in the maintenance of the car parks, despite the obvious need. Now we know why. We now have little choice but to increase parking charges in order to fund these essential works. It has been suggested to me that this money should be taken from the council's reserves. However, again, as you've heard from Councillor McIntyre, we are currently projecting a lower than acceptable general fund balance at the end of the medium-term financial strategy. It has also been suggested that these funds come from council tax payments, but I believe it is unacceptable to expect residents who do not use the car parks to pay for them. In December, we undertook a public consultation. Excuse me. The key headlines were that only 25% agreed or strongly agreed that our car parks are in good condition or well maintained. Only 53% of respondents were satisfied with the availability of the council-owned parking spaces. Only 18% of respondents paid by cash as a preferred method of payment. 78% of respondents stated that having council-owned car parks in proximity of my destination is important to them. 54% said they would prefer more secure car park options, for example, CCTV and help points. 29 frequently and 33 occasionally had difficulty in finding an off-street parking space. 21% of respondents said that they would or might be willing to pay more for improved parking facilities. The analysis of the written responses highlighted ongoing concerns around the increasing parking charges, stairwells and other spaces in the multi-storey car parks, including poor decorative order, cleaning and specifically the smell of urine, complaints around the maintenance, and finally concerns around the size of parking spaces not being large enough for modern vehicles. Following the public consultation, 2 petitions seeking no increase in the parking charges have been received by the council. This is a political stunt. It is interesting to note that the organisers of these petitions are both active members of the Conservative Party in Surrey Heath. The petition organisers are well aware that the timings involved in the petition process means that the final decisions by this executive and full council will have been made long before the council debates petitions. This is, of course, the very same party that, whilst in administration, neglected the car parks and allowed them to fall into the condition that they are today. The council pays in excess of £35,000 per annum for money handling. As you saw earlier from the consultation, very few use cash, and so we are proposing new machines that will facilitate contactless payments, which can be done either with a card or smartphone. This removes the need to worry about correct coinage and is practical to most residents. The Ringo app will still be available, but these machines will allow residents to pay without incurring a transaction fee. The pay-on-foot car parks located outside the town centre will continue to have a 30-minute free period. In the majority of cases, this gives enough time to undertake essential tasks such as popping to the chemist or the shops without having to pay. Whilst preparing the strategy, one of our priorities has been to ensure that the car parks outside the town centre are all charged on the same tariffs. This is with the exception of Chobham, as this serves a sang in addition to the village, and in order for it to remain a designated sang, the ability to increase parking charges are limited. I have also asked officers for further work to be done in respect of Frimley Lodge and Lightwater Country Parks in view of safety concerns arising from their deteriorating condition. I'm afraid I'm unable to comment on these much further until we have received more detailed information about the conditions on the ground and reviewed the options. I will say, however, that it only takes an untrained eye to see that, as with other car parks, the condition of the facilities in both parks have been allowed to fall to a serious state of disrepair. I am, of course, happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Councillor Mears, please.
Thank you. Not going to beat around the bush. Obviously, that petition was opened by a member of the Conservative Party. But are you able to acknowledge that the other potential 1,500 people aren't members of the party, and why you want to silence them instead?
It's not a matter of silencing people in that way. It's purely and I'm sure the monitoring officer will confirm, I can see him somewhere, the monitoring officer will confirm that this is the process of the petitions go through. And as such, the decisions will have been made by the time that the petitions come to be heard. Did you want to add anything else, Mr. Maniscal?
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. The petitions are run independently of the council's ordinary committee processes and decision making. So there will be a point in time when those petitions can come to whichever committee is appropriate, given the number of signatures, and the council can have the debate at that time. But it is a process that is independent of the council's ordinary committee meetings. So it will take its course, but so I don't think there's anything more to add to that. Okay.
Maybe just to add, our philosophy with this car parking strategy is that we want to ensure a safe and convenient experience for the residents. We want to ensure that they get good service, and we need to ensure it's cost neutral, because not all of the residents will be using the car parks. Some will be and some won't be. At the moment, looking across the portfolio as a whole, we are subsidising people that use the car parks. As Councillor Whitcroft has highlighted, there is a substantial backlog of maintenance and improvements required to meet customers' expectations, residents' expectations. And so that is the motivation in the car parking strategy. It's about providing fair value, and it's about making sure that our car parks operate in a cost-neutral way, going back to one of the principles that Councillor McIntyre alluded to in her opening speech around the budget. Please, Councillor Mears, you wanted to come back.
Okay, if I could just add, if you're able to confirm whether you'll be considering this petition when you decide this evening. 1,524 people have signed it. It surpassed the 250, the highest threshold for being discussed. So just some reassurance that you are going to, acknowledge that. There's another petition that has another 100 and something. So, to campaign for residents, what are you going to do about that this evening?
Thank you, Councillor Mears. As I think Councillor Whitcroft commented on, and you yourself accepted, it is a petition. The main one is a petition that is politically motivated and has been generated by members of your group. It also contains factual inaccuracies in it, in terms of the intention of this administration with respect to the parking strategy. So I do question about people's ability to understand and comprehend the various papers that have been issued. So yes, we do understand the feedback from residents that this is not what they desire. Governing and administrating is about making choices, and the choice we have made is that users of the car parks should be paying a fair value for the car parks and not be subsidised. And by doing that, we ensure that other services are protected for those most in need, who are potentially more in need within the borough. I honestly have no clue whose hand went up first.
Councillor Cope next.
Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, I would disagree with the inference that 1,500 people who signed a petition are all party politically motivated. However, I want to get on to what is not party politically motivated, which is the consultation that this council carried out. Now, it seems to me that, broadly speaking, the position of the administration is that works need to be carried out to the car parks, and that has to be funded through an increase. But I don't see how that's compatible with a consultation that says, when asked whether they agree with the statement, the council-owned car parks that I use are in good condition and well maintained, only 28% of people said they disagreed with that. So to come back to Councillor Lee's earlier remark, it must be a very well maintained moon that they are seeking to film on. When asked, would you be willing to pay a slightly higher fee within council-owned car parks if it meant improved facilities and services, 80% of people said no to that. I don't understand how this complete divide between your consultation responses and the outcome of the parking strategy is compatible with this council's supposed objective of engaging with and listening to residents.
Sorry, Councillor Whitcroft, do you want to respond?
Thank you. I draw the attention back to the fact that only 25% agreed or strongly agreed that our parks are in a good condition or well maintained. I would also say that there are, as I have said this evening, significant works that border on safety issues. Making these changes, increasing these costs in this way is not optional. It's not a discretionary service, and it's something that needs to be paid for. The reason it needs to be paid for is because of the neglect that has happened under previous administration.
Just to clarify from my side, Councillor Cope, I said the petition was politically motivated, not the people that signed the petition. But thank you for phrasing that in a different way. Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Was next in your opinion? Okay. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Garrett, thank you.
Thank you. So, my understanding with these petitions is that the net result of them is that we then debate
the subject which we're doing right now. So I feel like we are taking account of what's been said and how many people have signed it, and that's why we're talking about it now. But I wanted to ask specifically about one comment that was in the petition, or one suggested proposal in the petition, which that we are proposing charges at Lightwater Country Park. Looking at the document, I don't see any proposal. I just see comments about feasibility work required to evaluate the most appropriate options, etc., etc. Now, a lot of the comments made by residents, and I'm sure there are many in this room that have received similar emails, were incredibly valid. We've already discussed them internally with our group, and I think they're all very valid comments and well made. I'd be interested to know have a little bit more colour for what is meant by evaluate the most appropriate options with the subsequent report to executive, how far that conversation has gone, and are there proposals on the table?
Councillor Whitcroft, please.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Just to confirm that, as I said, we are looking at the case in terms of both of the parks. I cannot, as I've already said, comment much further on this because I wouldn't want to make comments that are then interpreted in the wrong way. And I think it's extremely important that we understand the conditions of the car parks in the parks. And then we take the time to review the options once we have that information. Mr. Stevens, did you want to add anything to that?
I can, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Anyone who has visited either Lightwater Country Park or Frimley Lodge Park knows that they are heavily rutted, very potholed, and every single time we try and fill them, and my hat goes off to the Green Spaces team for continually having to fill those potholes, they reappear. Every single downpour that we have results in further damage to the car park surfaces, so something more long-term needs to be done. We don't have a full amount of costs in relation to both those car parks. We don't have detailed condition surveys either, so that work needs to be done before we can draw together any further detail that can inform a decision.
I think it was Councillor Garrett. He's been very patient. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Just want to bring up the subject of maintenance. I don't know what the term recent years means, but in recent years, the previous administration spent £1,491,135 on car parking. Resurfacing. So maybe we need to look at the contractor we're using for the resurfacing. I'm just saying, I'm just picking up on the fact, the vibe that we're insinuating there's not much invested. 1.4 million is a lot of money, and if the car parks are now in the state that they're in, then maybe we need to, when we're looking at what we're going to do, we need to maybe look at the people that are doing it to make sure the contractors we're using are the best contractors for the job. And the other thing is, I think the other issue we have is, and I know this because I was portfolio holder for just a very short period of time, the big issue, I believe, and someone can correct me, is that since we are now moving towards electric cars, they are a lot heavier, and they are causing a lot more damage to car parks and create lots of potholes, which I know is a big thing we all love talking about as councillors. So I think it's something we also need to consider, that maybe where we would normally have resurfaced to a certain level with previous cars, EV cars, which I know we're obviously trying to move people towards, are potentially more heavy and actually cause a lot of damage to car parks, specifically multi-storey car parks. I know it's an issue as well. So it's just a few things to throw out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Could you just confirm the time period that you're referring to?
Yeah, now I believe, because it was on the executive paper from January 25th, 2022, at that time, the figures that were there go back from 2014 to 2021. There is nothing after that because I don't have the figures to hand. But so it's only about £300,000 a year, I know. But the inference was there's no money been invested, and obviously that's not specifically the case.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. So just to confirm, were you saying 1.4 million over a 7-year period? Is that what I heard?
It's 1.1 1,491,000, yeah, 1.4. Well, yeah.
Over 7 years, so it's 200,000 a year, not 300,000 a year, just because I know Councillor Cope likes to check my maths.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so 200,000 a year. So listen, it's fair comment in terms of the heavier cars and everything else. That is definitely an issue with the electric cars. But that is a trend that's increased, and obviously with yourself being a portfolio holder and others in the chamber being in administration, you were aware of that trend, and yet you didn't change the contractor quality or contractor perspective here. Let's just flip this the other way. Are we saying that the residents want unsafe car parks? They want them poorly lit. They want insufficient accessible spaces for the disabled and for people with prams and parents, etc. They want poor road surfaces, and they want limited payment options, because I genuinely don't believe that's the case.
I agree with your statement. I do go back to the consultation that you did, and I think it was 35% agreed that they, was it? I can't remember, you had them up.
Yeah, I did have them up, I don't anymore.
I've got it up. It's
the good surfaces,
35%
yeah?
agreed or strongly disagreed.
Yeah.
So the people disagreeing or strongly disagreeing are actually the smallest grouping of people in your report.
So, but I take on board the comments as you made them, but your own consultation, that wasn't the feedback that the residents necessarily gave.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, the wider picture is that we obviously see a lot of information that the residents don't see, as you appreciate, Councillor Garrett. And, the quote that Councillor Whitcroft said earlier about our main car park was that the car park appears to be in a lower than satisfactory condition with some notable structural concerns. Now, I cannot continue to allow that to happen and put our residents at risk, and therefore we need to take these actions. And whether it's that car park or the other car parks, we need to provide good quality services to our residents. Now, I have to admit I lost track. Councillor Rise, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Would Councillor Whitcroft agree with me that while the petitions that have been submitted would go through the proper process, that they have been, as noted, they have been organised by a Conservative Party that also refused to consult on their car parking charge increases in the previous term, specifically when requested by myself and by Councillor Whitcroft, because that was the main focus of our call-in, that it's a bit rich now for the Conservative Party to be complaining about the car parking charges when they were more than happy to do it without any consultation last term.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Yes, I do agree with you. And I too remember, as part of the call-in, asking the very same question. For that reason, and we did commit as part of our election pledges that we would be more open and honest and consult and speak with the residents, which is exactly what we've done. Thank you.
I think it was Councillor David Whitcroft. I'm going to take a couple more in the interest of time and progression. We'll bring things to a close. So just people be aware there's two or three more and then they're done. Councillor David Whitcroft, please.
Thank you. It's been interesting listening to the attempted defence which has been put up by the previous administration this evening. I don't think I was alone in detecting a hint of desperation coming into some of the arguments that were being put forward. I don't want to bandy numbers, but according to the figures I've seen, in the 3 years to 2021, some £700,000 was spent on maintaining the car parks. My understanding is that in the year 2022, nothing was spent on maintaining the car parks. I stand to be corrected on that if that's wrong. But the point about that is that it was all spent reactively. It was all spent repairing holes and keeping up with necessary legislative changes. It was not spent on preventive maintenance in any way, shape or form. And that is why the car parks are in the dreadful state which they're in as we sit here now. They are lamentable. as pages 12 to 20 of the strategy document describe. Now, coming on to the question of the users and the consultation, nobody wants to pay increased parking charges. I don't want to pay increased parking charges, and I'm sure nobody in this room does. But the plain fact of the matter is, if the car parks are to provide the safe and satisfactory experience for our residents, we need to spend some money. We need to spend a great deal of money. And as has been said a couple of times this evening, it is only correct that most of the burden for that falls on the users. And I think probably just about everybody in this room would agree with that. So what we have here in summary, in my opinion, is a recommendation which is before the executive, which recognises the extent of the problem within our car parks. And I might add that that's probably the first time that that's ever been done in this council. And it proposes sensible and measured actions to address those problems. The opposition can snipe politically at the proposals all they like. But the plain fact of the matter is that had the car parking facilities been maintained properly under their watch, we would not now be in this position. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Councillor White, I think, was next. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to speak on behalf of my residents, not on behalf of my political party. And I have had quite a lot of communication from my residents, not to do with the petition, but real concerns about losing half an hour parking. No comments about the prices going up. I haven't had any comments on that whatsoever, but just from the older residents within my ward. They're just concerned that they cannot whiz around the village like certain councillors can. They take their time. They, meet a friend in the high street or whatever. They go to the chemist. Sometimes they can't park at the doctor's. They have to park in the car park. The library, volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers in the village that work in different shops, and for them to have to pay from half an hour as opposed to an hour will affect them as well. Got mothers with small children. It takes them longer to get the kids out the car, put them back in, than it does for the half hour. So I suppose, I am appealing on behalf of the Bagshot residents that half hour is not taken away from them. An hour is just what they need. It's just the right time. And people that use the car park longer pay for it, obviously. So my question is, how much will actually be raised by reducing it to a half hour parking? And, can you not think of the demographics of the age of the people in our village? It is an ageing village, unfortunately. And also has affected the businesses as well, because we've got a lot of independents, we've got a lot of good independents in Bagshot as well that just rely on people popping in. And popping in isn't just half an hour. It can go over the half an hour, and you don't want to be panicking of, have I reached my half hour or anything. But I would just ask that be looked at. And this is not a political plea. This is a plea on behalf of my residents.
Thank you, Councillor White. Understood. Councillor Whitcroft, do you want to respond to any of that? And there were a couple of points in there, I think.
Yes, I would, please. I would say, obviously, as other people have said, nobody wants to pay more for the parking. And however, that doesn't change the fact that the work has to be done. We have to fund this somehow. Again, it's been said that it's not right for it to be people who don't use the cars. Therefore, it can't come through council tax. We've looked into the possibility of the reserves for reasons I outlined earlier, that's not possible either. we have looked at every alternative and we have tried to find another way, but unfortunately, we are going to have to, in order to maintain the car parks, we are going to have to, they do need to be paid for, I'm afraid. Did Mr Stevens, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. I know that Alan Burns, our parking manager, is dialing in virtually. He has messaged me to say he's going to provide the figure. If we can just bear with him while he goes through the spreadsheet, Councillor White, and then we'll come back to that, if that's okay.
Maybe just to add from my side, and it took me a while to find it in the report. The change from 30 minutes to an hour, I understand is a change, and obviously that people have to then change their habits in terms of how they manage that, whether they're in and out or not. If the comment about whizzing round the village was aimed at me, I'll take that as a compliment, by the way. Thank you, Councillor White. But, I mean, just to put it in perspective, even when people are paying for an hour, we're asking for £1, which is 1/3 of a cup of coffee. I think that just puts it in a little bit of perspective. Now, I appreciate that times are tough for people. There is some correlation between people's income and whether they have cars or not. So in theory, if you have a car, you are not necessarily in the lowest group, but I know it's not a complete correlation. And I think your points were well put. They have been considered through the process. But just to put it in perspective, it's 1/3 of a cup of coffee, average price of a cup of coffee. My colleague here says it's Councillor Hode, and then I'll take Councillor Mears and Garrett. So I'm terribly sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, we now have the figure that Councillor White was asking for, Mr Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Whitcroft, and thank you, Mr Burns, for pulling this together. We don't have exact figures because the sort of the throughput, if you like, or the churn between 0 minutes and 60 minutes isn't recorded for all of our car parks. So we are working on estimates, and those estimates are based on buy-in. The estimate is somewhere between £60,000 and £182,000 of income in relation to the 30 minutes difference.
Thank you, Mr Stevens. I'm going to draw a line. I've been super generous here, as my colleague will agree. So we'll take 3 more from this point, and unfortunately that's Mr Wilson, you're out. So Councillor Hode, please.
Thank you. Our car parks across Surrey Heath are a mix of town car parks serving retail and commercial, and a mix of more rural located car parks serving a more leisure activities. Now I know that Lightwater Country Park and Frimley are being dealt with separately because there are a lot of complexities there. But one of our goals as a council is to support the welfare and well-being of our residents. And one of the things I've heard and seen in a lot of feedback is how important being able to get into outside spaces. Can you just talk us through the car parks that people would use for leisure, excluding Lightwater and Frimley Park? Can you just talk us through, are they mostly staying free? Is there some charging? How much are we likely to impact people's exercise, health and well-being access through this?
Thank you, Councillor Hode. I'm getting signals that, could you do your mic, do you mind? I'm getting signals Mr Stevens might answer this one. There was a picture, I think, in the report as well, wasn't there?
Yeah. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Hode. Can you repeat the question, please? I believe it was in relation to the leisure car parks and whether or not there's a charge or an impact for those, is that correct?
No, not those, because I understand that those are being dealt with entirely separately. It was more the leisure car parks that are not Frimley and Lightwater. How many of them do we have, and will they continue to be free access for residents to use for exercise and recreation?
So I'll answer those back to front, if I may, Councillor Hode. In relation to whether or not they will remain free, there is no suggestion that we will be charging for those at this point in time. We have had detailed conversations with the Leisure and Recreation Services Manager and her Green Spaces team about the feasibility for charging in those car parks, and it's not something that we are currently recommending. and I will find you the figure on the other car parks because it has escaped me.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. There's half a dozen, I think, of them, maybe slightly more, that will remain free. And for some of them, it's for the walkers, and for others, it's the sports folk, including from a ex-Chop and Rugby person, they that shall not be named, which is the Camberley Rugby Club at Watchet's Recreation Ground. We had Councillor Mears.
Thank you. Quickly before I ask my question, I thought your coffee analogy was quite ironic, actually. In Councillor White's ward, you have the opportunity of going to the independent coffee shop in the village and staying for free less than an hour, or you could drive up the A30 and a bit further on, get free parking at a commercialised coffee shop. So I'm just concerned about the independent businesses and the fact that you want to drive them to more commercialised areas. Anyway, from the report, I was disappointed to not really see much qualitative analysis, but I did gather the words urine and smelly in what you said. But in the forecast, cleaning only has a minor increase of £20,000, of which £17,000 is a deep clean provision. So in terms of preventative maintenance, how are you going to be cleaning up the smelly urine?
I'm very happy to pass that one on. Thank you, Councillor Mears.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mears. Why do these fall to me? Yes, there is a cost in there for a deep clean. We currently have a cleaning contractor who cleans our multi-storey car parks. Some would say not to an acceptable standard. So clearly what we are doing is working with that contractor to hold them to account. The deep clean is to get us to a point of satisfactory standards, and then thereafter the expectation is that our current contractor will adhere to those standards and maintain them. There are other elements in relation to the strategy as well which are worthy of consideration, such as the inclusion of CCTV, which should, we hope, deter public urination and other problematic matters that happen within those stairwells and within the car parks in their entirety.
Okay, well, if you're not going to be spending any more, you can hold them to account as much as you like, but I still don't think that could stop a vulnerable person urinating it as what otherwise quite a private area during the night. No one's going to see that CCTV apart from a very close group of people. So does more attention need to be paid to the consultation feedback of smelly behaviour?
If I may, Leader, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mears. The CCTV will be monitored. It'll be monitored by the security officer that works in the car parks effectively when our parking services officers are not working. And ultimately, if there is an issue with a vulnerable person, as you suggest, then clearly they can raise the alarm if they need to. So it's an added element because the CCTV provision as it currently stands certainly needs an upgrade. We do not wish for any of our customers to provide us with feedback about the undesirable odour within the multi-storey car parks or anywhere else. So I can assure you, whilst it's not expressed in the financial figures, we will be working to make that far, far better than it currently is.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I mean, maybe just a couple of things to add there. We did look extensively for research around the impact of pricing charges on consumers' behaviour, residents' behaviour, because obviously we're not the only people with car parks and we're not the only people that have ever thought of raising the prices. There doesn't seem to be anything out there definitively. This happens to be a space I know reasonably well, not car park pricing, but pricing in more general. And we are all creatures of habit. So if you always went to the coffee shop in your local area, you are more likely to continue to do that than go somewhere else. So we should have some confidence around that. I think the community safety one is probably one that we didn't come to until quite late there. I think it's a very important one because by creating that very positive shopping-friendly experience within the car park, we encourage more people to come. So whilst the prices may be going up, if we create the right proposition by having a nice environment for people to visit, remember that for many people that will be the entry point into Camberley, then we create the right ambience for them to continue to come. I'm focusing there on obviously the the multi-stories, but I think the principle is the same, that whether it be Chobham High Street or whatever, you create the right environment, people will come. Councillor Garrett, and then we will bring things to a close.
I promise it's a very quick question, but actually just picking up on the smell, I know me and Mr Stevens had a number of conversations about the smell and the maybe shoddy work that the contractors possibly were doing, and we needed to get them to do a better job because there was more than one person that complained about it on a regular basis. My question is actually very simple, and it relates very much to the question I asked at the beginning of the evening. If we're going to increase car parking prices, there is going to be a chance, I would suspect a very high chance, especially for a place like Walton Road, which I know is already a problem, that people are going to start not parking in the car park, which means they'll be parking elsewhere. Now, we already know we have an issue that Surrey aren't coming out and ticketing people and enforcing that. And I know I brought this question up at the Performance and Finance, but I thought I would bring it up here again. This is obviously something that we do need to address, and I know Councillor Asprey is pulling his hair out already on this. I was for a very short period of time in the month of which I was portfolio holder and they took over. It was very frustrating. What can we do to try and make Surrey come and make sure they're enforcing the parking? Thank you.
Councillor League, if you could follow the process, that would be appreciated. I think that's your second interjection this evening off script, so watch it, please. Thank you. You may well have stolen my line, by the way, which was something which is if you guys couldn't get it sorted with your buddies up the road, then I'm not sure what chance we've got at the moment, but that's one for another day in another environment. Mr Stevens, are you able to comment on the relationship
Just
with
for the
Surrey
record,
and
it's the
encouragement?
officers at county, not the councillors at county that are the issue, to be fair, I believe. I mean, the portfolio holder obviously needs to be involved, but it's the officers that we need to be building up the relationship.
Agreed, but hopefully they work for the members, not the other way around. But that's not always the case in all councils, I understand. Mr Stevens.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Yeah, we're trying to forge much better relationships with our county colleagues than we have previously had. We know that there are some former district and borough colleagues who've gone to work at county to assist in the management of the NSL contract, and they're the ones that we are engaging with. I know, as an example, that Junior Greenfield, our corporate enforcement officer, is engaging with one of those colleagues to try and encourage them to take a more proactive approach to enforcement within our borough. You know, a county-wide contract is always going to be challenging in terms of where you focus your attention, and clearly we'd like them to focus it on Surrey Heath.
Thank you very much, Mr Stevens. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. I know they're all heartfelt in representing your residents. This administration will be honest and transparent with the residents about the issues that we have. This is one of them that we need to address, the imbalance. We're not afraid to do so, and we're not afraid to try and make things better in the process as well. So it hopefully will end up being a fair trade-off. So we are asked to we're asked to resolve even. And I've had a process improvement observation from the Chief Executive. We're asked to advise, it's advised to resolve that points 1 to 4 are agreed. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
We did have a brief discussion there. I forgot to mention it at the beginning about the potential for a break. I believe we've probably broken the back of this now. And I intend to push through to a conclusion without a break. Obviously, if people need to drift off and come back, then please do what you need to do. But I'm not planning to have a break in the agenda. We move on to item 11, which is the review of planning service fees and charges 2024 to 2025. I'm terribly sorry. How could I do that? Please, sir. How could I do that to you? I apologise. Councillor Feenan-Cook, please.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, review of grant schemes. This paper supports the implementation of the new council strategy that we've just been reviewing when considering the award of ward councillor, community fund and lottery grants. It's an essential component in the financial management of our grant distribution, in transparency and consistency in decision making when grants are awarded, to enable applicants to better understand whether or not their applications will be successful, and is the sensible thing for a prudent and financially responsible council to review. Council award grants criteria were last reviewed in November 22, and these further recommendations are based on feedback since that review. These grants are very useful for councillors to be able to make smaller contributions for the benefit of the residents in their ward without too much bureaucracy, and we discussed that the last time we spoke. We do, however, need to ensure that they are fairly distributed, used for the benefit of residents, and that they support our overall aims of a more inclusive and fairer society. We also know that some wards utilise this grant in full, but some make few, if any, recommendations, and we see an uneven distribution of spend across wards. There are strong links between the ward councillor grants and the revenue grants, in that both are used to support our most vulnerable residents through charitable associations and support healthier and more inclusive communities. Therefore, it's proposed that the saving from ward councillor grants is used to fund, in part, revenue grants. The scheme criteria is structured to help councillors know when the grant may be used and to ensure that there is sufficient governance and oversight without increasing bureaucracy. The process of application will remain as it is now. In terms of the Community Fund grant, this draws down from a fixed amount within our reserves, which reduces with each successful application, and therefore it will eventually cease. The refreshed criteria allows the Community Fund to be more transparent and therefore more likely to be successful, so that applicants are more aware of what they must cover within their application in order to be successful. There is a requirement to support the Council's strategy, and again makes it clear that awards are discretionary with no right of appeal. The intention of the grant is to benefit as many residents as possible. The criteria has been designed so that it complements the criteria for the Ward Councillor Grant Scheme and the Lottery Grant Scheme. It's essential that grant awards are consistent, fair and transparent, and that the decision-making rationale is clear, and it's for this reason that the criteria has been documented in the paper before you. The Lottery Grant Scheme has been running within Surrey Heath Borough Council since 2019. Again, it is important that grants are consistent and transparent in the way they are awarded and decided, and that they support our strategic aims. I am open to questions and feedback.
Councillor Garrett was first up, I think.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Fine and Cook. Sorry, I'll get it right. I will get it right eventually at some point. You and me have discussed this. My ward is one of the wards where I could spend it 4 times over. So I actually like the idea that. I don't like the idea it's reduced to £1,000 because I could have spent £1,500. But the fact that there's going to be another bite of the cherry, I think, is a good one. And I would implore those councillors that find it difficult to spend their money to find somewhere to spend it, because whilst the revenue grants are a very, very good thing, the money that this helps is the small ones that don't get access to the revenue grants. I have been lucky enough to support a number of organisations within my ward, and I always spend my money, so that's a very good thing. I've got one question, actually, personal question. I noticed as I was reading the paper, I actually volunteer at the Club Dean, for instance. I've also supported Club Dean. Does that mean I can't support them in the future? Just a question to throw out there, just to look at. I wasn't supporting them when, but I have done since. And I got one other question for you. Lottery grants. Do we know how much money's actually been raised for charities since 2019? I've never actually seen a figure, so it'll be really interesting to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I will ask Mrs Kipping to come back about the amount of the lottery grants. I'm sure that she'll be able to provide that in a moment. In terms of the difficulty about volunteering for an organisation that you wish to provide a ward councillor grant for, I share your pain on that because I have the exact same issue in my ward. It is the case, however, that one of your colleagues can support that. So I think we need to begin to look at how we cooperate with fellow members and ensure that we are making sure that those organisations do still get the support. But I think as a volunteer, it is important that you are not compromised in that way.
That's why I'm bringing the point up, because it wasn't until I read that paper that I suddenly realised, so I maybe have to declare an interest that I supported the charity and I volunteered twice and intend to more. So I take on board what you say, and I will make sure that is, and it will be written down. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Kipping, do you have the figure on the lottery?
Can you just repeat the question? I'm so sorry. I was busy thinking about your first question. and the answer to your first question is if you're not part of the decision-making process, you just need to declare an interest. But I was so busy writing that one down, I did not hear your second question.
It's a simple question, which you may not have the figures for, so I don't, if you haven't got it. Lottery grants, since 2019, how much money have we raised and been able to give to local charities?
I'm going to need to check with my administrator. Can I send that to you after this meeting? Yes, thank you.
Maybe I think everybody might be interested in seeing that.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'd like to agree with everything you said at the beginning. As fate would have it, I've literally signed off or seen the first one come through today. So, and where are we? The middle of February. So I'm one of the ones that probably is not able to get rid of the money in light water to people that need it. So please come forward with your ideas. It was Councillor Rowlands, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sometimes as a new councillor, this money is sometimes like an albatross around your neck. You feel it should have been spent and you haven't spent it. I think just today I heard that I'd managed to spend my first 500, which was very, very pleasing. But it's been a mixed experience. I mean, I got to the stage where one proposal had gone in, and I was quite sad after a lengthy visit, but found that in their infinite wisdom, they had been advised that money already existed, and there was no need for the grant any longer. So, that was a rather frustrating experience. I do think I was disappointed in this because I do think it's a challenge. I feel as I grow in experience, as previously been said, we will find many worthy people in receipt of it. And it's part of I suppose one of the, put it this way, unfortunate word, but perks of being a councillor, that you can at least see a direct effect of having some money of this kind to distribute and to make contact with worthy causes.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Okay, I would hope, and I know this came up in a previous, I think it was executive, I can't remember. I would hope there is a broad consensus across the chamber that this is tweaking a highly effective scheme set up by the previous administration, trying to target it in a slightly different way, which gives an opportunity for those most in need to take benefit from it. So. Does anybody else have any other questions or queries around this? No. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to what we need to conclude. And thank you very much to Ms Kipping and Councillor Fine and Cook for dealing with this one. The Executive is advised to resolve that the grant policy and criteria of the 3 grant schemes be amended as set out at paragraph 2 of this report. Are we so agreed? Yeah. I would just like to go back a stage because I completely failed to thank Councillor Whitcroft and Mr Stevens and his team, his extensive team, for the car parking strategy work. I suspect there is a date in their diary that says, Sean said we need to think about having a car parking strategy, and it's got a big black mark against it because it's been a lot of effort for them. So thank you very much to all involved. Right, we can move on to point number 11, a second time. The review of planning services, fees and charges 2024-25, which Councillor White took us to quite early doors. Who is doing this one? Mr Ashbury, Councillor Ashbury. No, Councillor Ashbury is still, he's wide awake now. Yeah.
I'm wide awake now. The sun's come up and it's a lovely day. It's widely recognised that local planning authorities across the UK have been operating at a deficit for some time, and Surrey Heath Borough Council is no exception. In order to make the first move in correcting this situation, the government increased planning fees on the 6th of December 2023 by 25% for non-major and 35% for major applications, with a plan to increase by CPI capped at 10% every April from 2025. This paper seeks to increase the fees for discretionary pre-planning services provided by the Surrey Heath team in line with these national increases. Further, the plan is to expand the existing fast-track planning service from householder applications to minor developments and to introduce administration charges for general inquiries and invalid applications. Currently, planning performance agreements with developers are negotiated on a case-by-case basis. This paper proposes that these are standardised with a clear fee structure. And finally, in this paper, in order to recover the costs of providing the building control service, it is proposed to increase building control fees and to introduce administration fees for those services currently provided to private building control contractors. Significant benchmarking has been carried out with neighbouring authorities in Surrey, and the proposed fees keep Surrey Heath Borough Council in line with our neighbours and remain competitive with the private sector. These changes to fees charged by Surrey Heath Borough Council will enable the planning and building control function to continue to provide a robust and responsive offering while recovering a higher percentage of the cost of providing these services from those using the services rather than from general council tax. All of these changes to fees, as was discussed earlier, have provisionally been included in the 2024-2025 budget and will have obviously a significant impact if they're not agreed. So I will take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury, and thank you for your commitment to attending in the wee hours there in Australia. Any questions from anybody? It's hardly worth your while getting up, Alan. sorry, I couldn't help myself. I think from my side, again, a massive thank you to Alan, but particularly Mr. Chinner and the team. This is an exceptional piece of work, and I think we've probably got the right people in planning, seeing it's a detailed area, because it's a very detailed report we got back. So real compliments to the team there in terms of the analysis and the thinking. Again, it's a bit like some of the other things we've discussed. The concept here is that the user pays, and I think the approach that's being taken is very much in line with where the government wants to take us, with some of the restrictions being removed, and still very competitive within the local geographic market, as Alan sort of commented on with the benchmarking work. So unless anybody's got anything, I'll give you one last chance, because I feel like Mr. Chinner's come for no reason as well. Nobody? Good. Okay. The executive is advised to resolve. Oh, we have one. Thank you, Councillor White. I appreciate you chipping in here.
It's just a quick one regarding building control. Building control doesn't have to be done by Surrey Heath, does it? It can be done by outside organisations. Do we lose control there if it's done by an outside contractor?
Thank you, Councillor White. So in terms of that, there is obviously the private sector who applicants can actually go to. In terms of the increase in building control fees and the increased charges, we're of the view that it won't affect our sort of market share. They can still come to us in terms of putting building regulation applications in to the council, so that won't affect that at all. It'd be the same process really, but there'll be an increase in the fees going forwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chinner. Okay, so the executive is advised to resolve that point I to 6, 1 to 6. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you to the team for that. We move on to number 12. ANPR procurement. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo. Who's with that one? Councillor Whitcroft, please. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll be delighted to know this one is considerably much shorter. So, once again, I would like to extend thanks to Mr Stevens, Mr Greenfield and Mr Burns for the work that they've done on this project. The Council's multi-storey car parks rely on a car park management system to allow people to park and pay for their stay when they leave. The visible parts of this system are the cameras which read the number plates, ANPR, the barriers to allow access and egress, and the pay stations. There is also the software that sits behind this. The current contract expires in June of this year, and there is no option to extend. We are also acutely aware that the physical equipment and software are outdated and in desperate need of an upgrade. Officers have undertaken a thorough procurement process and have recommended that, subject to the statutory standstill period, the new 10-year contract is awarded to bidder 2. As you will see from the confidential annexes, this new system is a saving on the current annual revenue cost, and the capital cost is lower than anticipated. The new ANPR barriers, intercoms, exit systems and pay stations are also a vast improvement on the current offering, with better functionality and the added opportunity for us to promote what Camberley has to offer on the entry and exit digital display boards. As always, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Just to remind everybody that if we start talking about the annexes on this one and the next one, then we'll have to go into exempt and lose our colleague from Lightwater and possibly a few others. So just bear that in mind as you come through with your questions. Yeah. Any questions on this one? Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think as a regular user of both those car parks and experiencing the frustrations of the clunky, antiquated technology, it's welcome to see some investment to try and improve our car parks and the user experience coming into Camberley, because of course the first touch point coming into our borough is quite often those car parks. So it's really good to see that we're focusing on trying to improve that user journey. So for Councillor Whitcroft and the hard-working officers, thank you for driving this forward. I know there's been a bit of a headwind and challenge this evening on some of this, but this investment is really, really important for that user journey for customers, so thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Any others? Councillor Mears, please.
Yeah, I'm looking at something in the annex. It's not to do with finances. It's about a picture that appears in there. Can I talk about the system?
I suspect that's probably okay. Yeah.
So it's the entry and exit VMS, sort of TV-looking units, which would appear to be a nice to have. Is this sort of wasteful in any way, having a screen that displays your number plate and a nice looking photo at the bottom?
Just on a point of order, I do apologise, and I have no real issue with the question that Councillor Mears asked, but as this is referring to information that's within a Part 2 annex, should we be discussing any information within the annex in open council? I'm sorry, Councillor Mears, to cut in, but it's just that question that I'm asking, and if I could just get advice from the monitoring officer.
Fair enough, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Thank you, Leader. It is absolutely right that in normal circumstances, it would be unwise to discuss elements in a confidential annex. In this particular case, with the particular question, I don't think it breaches that rule, so I think it's okay to continue that question, and I think Mr Stevens was going to offer an answer.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mears. Effectively, and I will look to officers to correct me because we do have multiple officers on the call, if you like, that I do need to give my thanks to for their hard work in relation to this particular procurement process. This wasn't a pick and mix. Effectively, this is what was put forward by the bidder as a solution. We think it is entirely appropriate. I don't think it is wasteful from my personal perspective, and the officers didn't either during their very lengthy evaluation of the tenders that were submitted. And it also provides us with an opportunity, I think it's expressed in the report, to promote the town centre, to promote the services that it provides, and to promote some of the services that the council provides as well, whether that's just general messages around community engagement or around the theatre or around the town centre offering.
No, I think that's fair enough. If it's part of the package deal and that was part of the tender and that's the most appropriate, then I think that's fair enough. What I just wanted to make sure, we've got lots of residents who aren't happy to pay if they saw this and it incurred an additional cost. I think they'd be quite offended.
Thank you, Councillor Mears, and thank you, Councillor Rhodes, again for your challenge. Yes, please, Councillor White.
So going over to a new system, does that mean that we're going cashless? And if so, why? And there's a big campaign everywhere at the moment that everything shouldn't be cashless. Various restaurants in Camberley are cashless, which I refuse to use. I still use cash, and a lot of other people. And what I should have mentioned with the bag shop parking as well, a lot of the residents' concerns were that the new machines that are put in are not going to be cash related. So will we be having both?
Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Leader. We will be having multiple payment options available, so we are not withdrawing from cash, but we have to acknowledge that customer behaviour is changing. So as we are with our pay on foot machines, where Councillor Whitcroft referenced earlier, we are providing different payment methods, so the opportunity to tap through contactless card or phone payments. The same will be offered through the town centre. We won't be withdrawing cash entirely, but I think there will be a point where that will need to be a conversation because customer behaviour is changing substantially.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so the executive is advised to resolve points 1 to 2. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to Mr. Stevens and the team that have worked this through, and Councillor Whitcroft as well. We move on to item 13, where we have the same issue around the exempt areas. 43 to 57 Park Street, the House of Fraser Building, Camberley. This one is with me. We have, the report is fairly short and crisp. We've looked at the various options for this building. Part of that was that we needed to do some survey work. The first survey work you do when you have a building like this is asbestos related. It confirmed asbestos and increasing propensity for it to degenerate. And that has basically put a halt on further survey work. So we have the proposal here that we invest, it's not exactly the right word, but we spend money to clear the asbestos so that we can then subsequently do all the detailed surveying work required in the building, particularly of all the various systems in place. We can also assess the actual state of the roof in detail and what, if any, repairs, including total replacement, might be required. And that will allow us to move to the next stage of accuracy in terms of the cost estimates for potential opportunities for this building, which go all the way from knock it down and give the land to somebody to develop it, through to something that might be multifaceted, as the report indicates, in terms of retail, some office space, including potentially for the council and some of its partners, and indeed some residential. We don't know what the right answer is yet. We have to get over the asbestos step first. I guess the other thing to say before I open up more generally is that if we were, for example, to come to the conclusion that demolishing the building and whatever, moving on in a different way, we still would have to remove the asbestos. And so it's a case of do it now or do it later. And yes, there would be a small synergy if you were specifically doing it as part of either a redevelopment project or a demolition. However, that would block out the opportunity for us to consider the opportunity, the development opportunities. So, if I haven't suitably confused you with that monologue, then any questions about the House of Fraser? I think Councillor Wilson going first, and then we'll move to Councillor Cope.
Thank you. Yeah, the report makes it clear that this building was a terrible decision to purchase it in 2016 by the previous administration. And it looks like all the options to deal with it run through having this work done to remove the asbestos. So going back to 2016, so I guess my question is for the monitoring officer. Was the decision to purchase this building taken unconstitutionally? The council published all of its documents on this purchase about 6 months ago, and it's still on the website. So it says that the purchase was taken under the urgent action process. The form with the 3 signatures on it from the then Chief Executive Karen Whelan, the then leader Councillor Moira Gibson, and the then Chair of the Performance and Finance Committee, Councillor Alan McLafferty, is entitled Urgent Action. And the minutes to the next executive meeting said that this decision was taken under the scheme of delegation of responsibility to officers, which is in part 3 of the Constitution under responsibility for functions. There is a way that this decision could have been taken at the time constitutionally under another process, under either access to information procedure rules or budget and policy framework rules in a completely different part of the Constitution, procedural rules, but that process was not followed. So I was wondering, is the Monetary Officer's opinion that urgent action process was used for this purchase?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for your question. So in 2016, the process, as you've rightly recounted, was an urgent action process. And the urgency provisions at the time, there were 2 pathways for urgent decisions. One was for urgent decisions that are not key decisions, that were within policy and within the budgetary framework, and a separate process for decisions that were key decisions and potentially outside the budgetary and policy framework. So this purchase was a key decision. So the council did have the powers to purchase the property, and the urgency provisions were there in the Constitution to allow for the purchase. I don't have in my memory the exact wording of the decision notice, and it's possible that it may have referenced the wrong part, and that may have been a mistake, but that doesn't make the decision unconstitutional. If the council had the power to make that urgency decision, it may have just been a typo or a mistake in not referencing the correct part of the Constitution. Separately, that's dealing with whether it's constitutional. I mean, if members wanted to debate the merit and the justification for using the urgency powers, that's for members to debate. That's a judgment call, but it wouldn't render the decision unlawful or unconstitutional.
But they are 2 different processes. The one in Part 3, the urgent action process, is a different process from the other processes under access to information and under procedural rules. So the process that all the paperwork we've got says was followed was the urgent action process. I mean, it says it all over it, and it says it was under the scheme of delegation of responsibility to officers. So if that process was followed, then it was unconstitutional because, as you say, it was not a decision that could be taken under that process.
Leader, is it okay to come back? Yeah. So I haven't got the wording of the decision notice in my mind at the moment, but clearly it was a key decision because of the value. And if urgency processes were going to be used, which they were used, then it would have had to have been down the pathway for urgency provisions which allow for a key decision to be made. Just parking for the moment the justification and the merit, which is a separate debate. So if I was to give a view on what I thought happened. I suspect it was an error in just referencing the wrong part, because clearly that value was a key decision and it would have had to have used that part. So it's more likely that it was an error in the form just referencing the wrong part or the wrong process, because those two pathways existed. But I'm not in a position to question the relevant persons that were here at the time to know exactly what happened. But I can only guess if I did ask that question, then that's probably the likely answer, but I'm not to know at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
Councillor Wilson, can we time, whilst I appreciate the comment, I think the proposal here doesn't exactly relate to your probing, and I think in the interest of good order, we'll move on.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify whether it was an unlawful action that had taken place to
I appreciate that, but it doesn't actually affect our decision today. So I think we'll park that one for now. Would you mind doing your mic? I think the thing that is a bit curious is how many errors were made in relation to this particular project. So we followed a slightly strange process. We may have had an error in the documentation, and a few other things, no doubt as well, like the documentation that went with it seemed to have gone walkabouts, according to the feedback from the monitoring officer when challenged around releasing all the various papers for this purchase. So who was next on the queue? Thank you, Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Leader. When we're considering the sort of long-term intentions of this property, I note in the report there's reference to rooftop mobile phone aerials. Now, I know from my profession that these can be an absolute nightmare to get rid of if you're seeking to redevelop, and often you have to give 18 months notice. I just wanted to check whether any consideration had been given to that and if any engagement had been entered into with the mobile phone operators.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor Cope. Ms. Breeden, do you want to pick that one up?
I haven't engaged with them yet, but it's certainly part of our thinking that we will need to. Thank you.
I think in terms of the timeline, you and I were discussing it just the other day, if we do proceed with this decision, we haven't had the full discussion yet, then it would be potentially 9 months to do this work. And then obviously the team would have to process all of the various outputs, and then we'd go forward to the next stage. And we'd probably have the time you're talking about within the overall process. I think the very, very original timeline I saw when I first came in might have seen, was it 2025 or beginning 26, Mr. Breeden, do you remember? And I know that's drifted quite a bit since then. Or something actually, real people going into that building, enjoying life, yeah.
But the other aspect to it is most of the options don't affect the aerials. So it depends what we want to do with the building.
Although one of the options, again, we keep wanting to look at options. One of the options is, could we go higher as well? The foundations are probably up for it. So we'll keep looking at options. Was it Councillor Garrett? Yeah, Councillor Garrett, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And a question based on the paper before us. So I've been asked by a fellow councillor that's not here tonight, so I'm thinking of the question he asked. So the windows within the House of Fraser, which we all know look not very nice. In fact, there's a nice growing mould in one of the windows right now. We did have for a short period of time some advertising on them. I'm assuming that was taken down because of HMRC business rates not being advertised on the side of a building, etc., etc. If that be the case, I appreciate that, and we obviously can't do anything about that. A suggestion has been made that somewhere like Farnborough Tech might be interested in putting a display in the window. Said window would obviously not have any mould in it. Is that something we would consider whilst the building is still standing, and obviously making it look a bit prettier? Thank you.
Would you like to pick this one up? I think the answer to that is possibly yes and maybe, but maybe you could give a bit more detail. No, some of it was the vinyls and stuff.
Yes, happy to follow up on that and look at that as an option.
Was my understanding of the advertising correct, that was there that then disappeared?
Correct, yes, it was.
I was under the impression some of the mould had gone, but maybe I didn't look close enough the other day when I was down there. Outside, not inside. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson, please.
Just quickly, it's possible I should have known the answer to this question, but when was the asbestos discovered? Was it only discovered when House of Fraser moved out of the building?
I think there was a previous report. Would you have the date in your head?
It was known about at the time of purchase. It was referred to in the original survey report.
Okay. I mean, this is a big decision. I mean, this is not an insignificant amount of money to basically not really go anywhere. Has anybody got any further questions to try and make sure we make the right decision here in terms of scrutiny? Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just a quick one. Did Mr. Breeden say that there is an original survey report in the council's records?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're asked to take the first step on this journey to work out what the final solution is for the House of Fraser building. Very much reminds me of Homes Under the Hammer, where they say, did you look at the pack? Did you visit the property? And somebody says no, and sometimes it works out well and sometimes it doesn't work out well. I don't think it's going to work out particularly well for us financially in terms of the amount of money that's been spent already on this, the value erosion, and the amount that we need to spend going forward. However, all of the past is the past, and we need to make sure that we create something the town is proud of going forward and addresses the residents' needs. So this is the first step under the officer's recommendation. And so the executive is advised to resolve that, subject to the agreement of the budget by the full council, 1 through 2, sorry, it's two separate, 1 and 2, the executive is advised to resolve that, subject to the agreement of the budget by the full council, points 1 and 2 are agreed, and the executive is advised to recommend to full council that a new capital bid of 3.5 million be approved for points 1 and 2. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you to Mr. Breen and the team for all their work on this one, which is a very complex topic. We got there. Well done, us. Take the rest of the evening off and enjoy it. Thanks ever so much for your time and engagement, and to all of those on the phones. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.